G'day, it's Professor Joseph Drew here. In the previous video I outlined the fiscal outcomes arising from the 2016 forced amalgamations of New South Wales local government. In this video and the next, I'll start to explain the reason why local governments often disappoint, why they don't save the money that the public policy architects expected them to save, and indeed in the case of New South Wales, why they end up costing local government more money. A lot of this material is drawn from a book last year, Reforming Local Government, and even more of it's drawn from my upcoming book that'll come out this August, Saving Local Government. Now, I will also note that we've got to do better. Too many communities were hurt badly by the last lot of forced amalgamations. Too many communities were hurt in Queensland and Victoria from the failed forced amalgamations also. We've got to do better. We've got to start learning our lessons. We've got to stop getting commercial consultants in who aren't experts in the field, and we've got to do better, because if we don't, people suffer, and I just don't want that to happen anymore. I've seen too many people suffer with botched up amalgamations, and that's what this video is about, explaining how we can do it better. Thank you. So, as I said in the last videos, in New South Wales in May 2016, the assumption was that significant savings were going to happen here, savings from wages and expenditure and redeployment of staff. And that's where all the money, the big money, was supposed to be saved to contribute towards that $2 billion over 20 years. Figure changed along the time, but the headline figure is originally we're going to save you $2 billion over 20 years. And I showed you the empirical work, the regression analysis, difference regression analysis, where I showed seeing 3 years after the amalgamations, and bear in mind the state government itself said that you'll see great things by the end of 3 years, comparing 3 years before to 3 years after, we actually saw that the staff expenditure went up by 15.2%. So clearly we're not going to have those savings, and there's reasons for it. Now, there were supposed to be other savings from materials and contracts. You're supposed to have a bigger council, has more purchasing power so they can get a better deal. It sort of suggests that they think councils don't get the best deal at the moment, which is not correct at all. And also, if it truly is the case, well, why not do statewide procurement like they have in some states? If that's the case, that bigger organisations can get better deals, but it's not the case. And there were supposed to be savings from councillor fees, and none of these savings materialised on average. So the key question for me is, why do we keep making a mess out of these amalgamations in Australia? We must learn, because if we keep making it 10-11% harder for local governments to stay solvent every time we decide that it's a great idea to amalgamate some, well, very quickly we're going to have an awful lot of insolvent local governments to deal with. And that's going to cause huge disruption to people's lives and to communities. So the main reason, the number one reason why these amalgamations fail is because people don't do their homework. We get expert panels who contain people of dubious expertise. They cannot prove their expertise in a scholarly way. They do not have the empirical skills and econometric skills and data development analysis and things like that to do empirical investigations of how much can be saved. Yet they speak so confidently about all these wonderful things that are going to happen, and they just move from one state to the next state, leaving a trail of destruction behind them, and yet we keep doing it. So it's not surprising if you don't do your homework, if you don't do the empirical work, you're really just taking a flying guess. It's not surprising that most amalgamations aren't going to work. If you do the empirical work, if you know where the savings to be found, and if you go out of your ways to select homogenous, similar councils to get together, and if you go to the trouble of knowing the communities and go to the trouble of knowing the complementarities in the organisation, you can probably do amalgamations quite successfully. But that's never done. People just don't do the homework. Number two, I've already mentioned it, experts. Experts with no expertise and no capacity to demonstrate their expertise. And to be quite frankly with you, some of these so-called experts are mere quacks. They have no expertise. That's why they don't demonstrate it. That's why they can't demonstrate it. Now, why state governments keep paying them millions of dollars for their opinion is beyond me. You can grab someone off the street and get an opinion. If you want true expertise, you've got to pay an expert. As I often say on radio, you know, to go to a generalist firm like some of these accounting firms is like going to a general practitioner, a GP, to get brain surgery. It's not going to end well. If you're doing something very intricate and very important like this, you need to go to a true expert that has local government expertise, who can prove it, who can do the empirical work that's required. Number 3, failure to acknowledge the full cost of amalgamations. IT costs, always understated. Building costs, rarely if ever mentioned, and yet one of the first things amalgamated councils do is discover they can't fit everyone into the building and can't fit all the crew into the depots, have to sell them up and purchase new buildings and new depots. Accounting costs, never talked about, and they can be significant, the write-downs and revaluations following amalgamation, just totally ignored. Number 4, failure to understand service harmonisation. If you put two communities together, and just about every council has a different mix of services. That's the whole idea of local governments, that they can tailor goods and services to the particular needs and tastes of their community. You then go and put them together and they become one council. Well, it's not unreasonable that the people will say, well, that council gets their bins picked up once a week. We only get ours picked up once a fortnight. We want ours picked up once a week too. Or that part of the council area gets a heated swimming pool. We don't have a heated swimming pool. We want a heated swimming pool too. That's not unreasonable. If they're now one local government area, they should get one level of services. Now guess what happens? Service levels always go up. No one turns around to their community and says, you know what, because you got amalgamated with this other group of people, we're going to start collecting your bins once a fortnight instead of once a week. It's just not going to happen. It's not politically possible. And as a result, we have huge service harmonisation costs, not even mentioned by the proponents of these amalgamations, the so-called experts who have led us to so many disasters. And it continues today. As I say, it's very scary what's happening in Western Australia. It's why I've gone to the trouble of making these YouTube videos. I need people to know the truth so we can avoid another disaster, so we can avoid other communities being devastated, people having their lives turned upside down for no reason, people being confronted with 53% increases to tax like they are in Cootamundra that got amalgamated, or people suddenly finding out that their council can't pay their wages like happened in the amalgamated Central Coast. We've got to stop this. We've got to start learning, and that's what these channels, these videos are all about. And most importantly, people fail to understand what efficiencies are. We keep talking about efficiencies and savings and staff costs. You know what they are? They're people. They're people with families, people with spouses, people with goals and dreams and career aspirations, people who deserve to be treated with dignity. And you know why amalgamations rarely save money? Because when you go to turn these efficiencies into actual dollar savings, you discover that your efficiency is a person. His name's Bob or her name's Sally, and they're really likable people. And it's really hard to destroy someone's life for no reason. And that is why amalgamations continue to disappoint. We've got self-professed experts. We've got people not doing their homework. We've got costs that have been ignored. And savings glibly described as efficiencies, when what we really mean is we're going to destroy people's lives. And when it comes down to it, we don't do those things. We don't realise the savings, but we do get all the extra costs. And that is why amalgamations such as New South Wales end up not saving money, but actually increasing unit expenditure on average by over 11%. Thank you very much. I'll be making a video shortly about the particular challenges for rural local governments, because they're a very different kettle of fish entirely. And living in a rural area, that photo you see on the front slide, that's me in my back paddock, having a farm, I understand the particular challenges for rural local government, which the people in Sydney just don't get it. They don't get it. And I'm not even sure they care. Thank you for your time.